if you live in this big urban metro area where the premium is put on having very positive communications, it can sort of self-select for these certain behavioral traits.
LA felt it was an amazing experience, and it's an amazing town, but it's huge. There's like millions of people. The city is literally huge. You know, it's like one of the largest city in the world.
The county is larger than the state of Rhode Island.
Right? It's just like
a bunch of that's
so big.
A bunch of that's desert, but even so, like it to give.
But it's so big. There's so many people. Everyone's there to make it in the showbiz, and it was just so overwhelming. And I felt very lonely, and it felt like such a big town, but also a very lonely town. And I could feel that I wasn't the only one who really felt lonely. And somehow, weirdly, there's this mechanism that happened is that even though we're all surrounded by millions of people, we all feel very lonely. And I have found that in big cities. And we talk about loneliness in rural space and you know, the countryside, but I haven't felt as lonely as I felt when I was in a big town. And I don't know what's the mechanism behind it, but there's a sense of there's so many people and it's very overwhelming and you feel just very lonely. How that happens, I'm not sure, but I don't know if you've experienced that or not. But
I have, absolutely. And your point about it being this is the case for big cities in general, that it's not just Los Angeles, but it could be any large city. I think part of what happens is because by definition everyone around you is a stranger, you're not going to interact with them the same way as if you were in a town where even if you don't know everybody, there's enough degrees of separation of connection that you'll feel some sense of community. But if all of your neighbors just live in these boxes that are kind of next to you and they just go about their day, there's also no real, there's no like communal space in the sense of, oh, there's like this patch of grass and people are kind of going to be there and you can kind of just like meet other people and get a sense of who they are. And you kind of take that away and then it just becomes, and then you throw in things like cars too. So you're driving in your own little metal box once you've left your living box, that you're not going to interact with a lot of people in a way that's going to make you feel, oh, I should like become friends with this person. And also I wonder if, because for so many big cities, there's such often high turnover rate in terms of people might be there and then they leave after a couple of years, they go somewhere else, whatever. There can often be a lack of a sense of like, you know, permanence of people who kind of stay around and you can kind of build relationships with them. And just, in general, I mean, this I'm only going off of a book that I read. It was called Quiet from a few years ago. But the writer was getting into actually your point about also Americans being like, they're very friendly and welcoming, but there's maybe not that much beneath it. Her argument, at least, was, I believe the woman's name is Suzon Lewis, but the book's called Quiet. She talks about that when the U.S. started becoming this major industrial powerhouse of especially things like sales, where people were living in big cities and there was a huge premium put on kind of these extroverted qualities where you had to sell stuff to people, it kind of put an emphasis and a value on having lots of superficially positive connections with other humans so you could sort of do business and sell things very easily, but where you didn't need to go much below the surface level of basically a business transaction when dealing with other human beings because of the new nature of living these big urban centers. And that also would tie into this idea of, if you live in this big urban metro area where the premium is put on having very positive communications with lots of people on like a very quick basis, like interacting with people to get your coffee or to get your car or to like check into the building when you go to work and all of these things where you just need to have everything go smoothly with a lot of different people, and there's really nothing else you need to do. It can sort of self-select for these certain behavioral traits where there's then not actually a whole lot beneath the surface.
That's interesting. Yeah, I never thought about it this way.
Yeah, and that that's why I'm just like make this a book review or something. But her sense of that if you went into a previous periods of time, and this it was also would have been true for like the early U.S. Where you don't have quite so much of a focus on these big cities with sort of face-to-face selling being the way that people go through life, that you did have much more of a emphasis put on things like people's sense in a community. How did they convey themselves as an individual? What was sort of their reputation in a, maybe a little bit more of a conservative kind of environment, where there was, and obviously not all good things. There was a lot more premium put on like traditional hierarchies and things in terms of like what family were you born into, and what kind of came along with being from that family and all of those sorts of things. But there were different premiums that were set on people's culture in a certain way.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. Never thought about it this way. Yeah.
But the idea of people being very atomized in big cities, again, even well outside of the U.S., and feeling tremendous crushing loneliness seems to be like a feature now.
It is a feature, and not to be that person, but
please
also,
be that person.
Where I think my generation, so I was born in the late 90s, and my generation and now the next generation is, I think there's this, the technology and the way our societies have changed, it's just made it so easy not to have to interact with anyone. To be able to go through your day without interacting with a single physical person. And it's great if you have social anxiety, but it kind of removes some like important social skills. And I found myself, so I live in Paris now, and I found myself spending like a whole day without having talked to a single actual person. So I talk maybe through text, or I can order my food. I can do a lot without having to actually socially interact with someone. And I think that plays a lot with our feeling of loneliness. And the internet is great, and social media can be a powerful tool, but I think it's also created a way of interacting with each other that has made us more and more lonely. And even though you can build a sense of community through social media and things like that, and you can interact with people from around the world, and living abroad, I was really glad that social media and technology existed, because it allowed me to talk to my family and my friends and to stay in touch with them. FaceTime has been a lifesaver, but it just teaches us to interact in a way I think our emotions and our brain were not prepared for. And it's created this loneliness in so many of us. So yeah, not to be a boomer, but
No, I don't. No, trust me, you don't need to preface that. I think, and it's something I actually more and more I kind of want to explore and talk about and understand, because it does seem to be that there is something that's really not lining up with how we're designed as people to find sort of meaning and fulfillment in terms of what these systems are doing. Certain clear benefits they have, but at a much deeper level, there's something that seems a little kind of off in terms of what it's doing to us. And I don't think that should be an age thing, and that the idea that, because something's new, it must be good.
No, I know, but my preface on the reason I'm insisting on age is that I don't think the generation before that, maybe the generation before, but I mean the 19s kids, maybe, or even late 80s kids um, might feel that more so than our parents or the generation before, because they were introduced to that type of technology so late in their development, that they still have the social skills as before. They still pick up the phone to actually talk to people and not send text, and it's a different way of interacting with others. And I think we've been impacted, and the next generation are even more impacted. And I don't know how it's gonna go, and I'm positive it's affecting everyone's emotions, and